If you live in a state like California with 54 electoral votes, you will never, ever meet your U.S. senator.
Right.
Now, let's face it, half of the state of New Hampshire, I know, you know what? It's more than that. It's more than half of the state of New Hampshire believes that Gene Shaheen, you know, should be on a Christmas card list.
This Up to Speed podcast is made possible by Legislative Solutions. Legislative Solutions knows New Hampshire's politics inside and out. With years of experience and a results-driven approach, they're the go-to team for anyone looking to make an impact at the State House. Find them at legislative-solutions.com. Welcome to Up to Speed, the podcast from New Hampshire Journal, bringing smart, hardworking people like you up to speed on what's going on in the various corners of the Granite State, from politics to business to civic life. I'm Michael Graham, managing editor of New Hampshire Journal. Thank you to Legislative Solutions for making Up to Speed possible. So, how does a small college in a small state become a major political player in the United States, particularly when we pick our presidents? It can't possibly have anything to do with Neil Levesque of the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, because I know Neil, and there's no way he could do something this important. Neil, welcome, and thanks for bringing us up to speed.
Thanks. You've been muted, by the way, but all right, here we go.
Oh, darn it. Well, I'll sign language everything from now on. So actually, before we get to the politics, let's start with the religion. I get people all the time who go, Saint Anselm's, like, is that a Catholic school or what? So can you just tell us about Saint Anselm College first? We'll start there.
Yeah, we're a Benedictine Catholic college. There's about 2,000 undergraduates here, some graduate programs. And the Benedictine monks run the institution, essentially, along with our president and our board of trustees. And yes, it is a Catholic institution. And we've been here about 140 years.
And how long has the New Hampshire Institute of Politics been there?
So the really interesting is that 3 days before September 11, 2001, Senator Judd Gregg cut a ribbon here, creating the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. He was very instrumental in the creation of this. And as a result, we have a 20,000 square foot facility devoted really to civics. And if you take the context of the fact that 3 days before September 11th,
right,
well, there were attacks on our democracy, this is really important to our history.
And from the standpoint of those of us who follow politics, what I find interesting is that you could argue that November of 2000, the Bush v. Gore, the hanging Chad election, was the beginning of what I think is the era that we're in now, and that things really started changing there. That's as good as any hinge moment to look at. So the Institute of Politics has been here for this modern era of politics all along. How did Neil Levesque stumble into the New Hampshire Institute of Politics? And knowing your background, I assume you have like compromising photos of somebody or something. Is that how you got this gig?
Yes. Well, everyone in my family's a dentist. And
no.
Yes, everybody. Back to my grandfather. So basically, I picked politics. They think I'm from outer space.
Right.
I was mentored by Hugh Gregg, who was Judd Gregg's father. And he was really a larger than life figure in New Hampshire. And he really taught me politics. I worked for a long time on the congressional side of things. I think someone always comes from either the right or the left who's in a business like we're in.
Right.
And I do. And but since then, I've become head of this nonpartisan institute. We try to bring as much activity together as possible. I always get asked by foreign visitors here, how do you not be on one side or the other?
Right.
The truth is it's just like, if you go to a good boxing match, it's not good if you know that the ref is on one side or the other. And you need someone who is going to basically facilitate the good argument. And the argument is good in democracy, and we want the argument to take place here. And we work very hard to try to bring in all sides. There are more than two sides, and we want to try to bring it all in here so we have as much argument as possible and as much activity as possible.
So what event would you point to as kind of the if you really want to understand the role that New Hampshire Institute of Politics plays in the first in the nation primary in our presidential politics, is what event, moment, speech, et cetera, would you point to as kind of exemplary of that?
Well, we have a lot of platforms where we try to cater to whoever's coming into the state. And
Right.
like 95% of what we do is not presidential. We get a lot of
Oh.
presidential notoriety,
Mhm.
and we certainly try to promote that here. But the point is that we actually do most of our work, anything from the Cub Scouts getting together and talking about civic issues to our Kid Governor program, which is for fourth graders here in New Hampshire, right on up to presidential candidates being here for things like presidential debates or CNN town halls. We've hosted, I think, 15 of those. So I think it all comes together. Our signature issue is, our signature program is politics and eggs that we do
Mhm.
with the New England Council, and that's because it's become kind of a nationally known thing where folks come in who are considering running for president, or even journalists who talk about the presidency, and they sign this wooden egg that's placed on every table. And
Why wooden egg? That's the thing that threw me off the first time I attended one is why wooden eggs?
so the wooden egg was basically, it was an idea of a guy named Fred Coker, and he produced some wooden eggs. They were kind of
I
like, yeah,
literally have
there
one
you
on
go.
my shelf. I
Yes.
just I didn't I reached through I should have thought of this before. Yep, there you go. There's my wooden egg.
So they were, you were always trying to create things that are sort of tchotchkes, or
Right.
as we call in fishing, chum, something guests can take away. And
Right.
and so they put this chum out on the tables. And so what happened was is that candidates started signing their names to them. And then people started collecting the signed
Mm,
eggs.
sure.
And we've had many people sign these eggs. We have to write down their names underneath because sometimes those people who are here become sort of irrelevant over
Right.
time. And it's like, who the heck is John Edwards, and so you have to sort of write their name down, and sometimes it's, you can barely discern who it
Yep.
is. Donald Trump, for example, I was driving him around and he was signing the wooden eggs in the front seat of the car, and his signature is so
Sure.
large,
Right.
it was going across the thing. It was quite funny. And that happens a lot. And sometimes people write messages. John Huntsman's wife wrote a message down for her husband on one of the eggs. So it goes way back. But what it is really is, people want to come to New Hampshire because it's really, this is we call it our state sport, but
Right.
really what it is a very civically engaged community. So the Institute of Politics tries to capture that activity and create a spot where people can feel that they can come and they can participate in civics and politics and engage with people who are running for president. And this is one of the many platforms that allows you to do that. And to some degree, we cater to that candidate, or many times to the campaign manager who is looking for a really good way to come and get their earned media
Right.
message out. And we offer that. And so we cater to getting to yes in politics. So if a candidate calls on a Friday afternoon when you're going out for your golf game and says, I really want to put 6,000 people in some sort of an outdoor stadium on Monday morning, and you have to cancel everything you're doing to
Right.
get there, we get to yes. And we do that.
Okay, so obviously I got to take you back to Donald Trump was in the front seat of your car? What the heck? How'd that happen?
So Donald Trump was actually in the front seat of my friend who owned an auto dealer's. He owned an dealership,
Mhm.
and I called him and I said, I got
When
some good
was
news.
this?
Bad news. This was in 15. I said, I need the biggest vehicle you've got, and the good news is that you're going to give it to me for free. And my friend Andy did do that. He came along for the ride. I had Michael Cohen in the seat behind me, and I drove Donald Trump around, and it was
Wow.
surreal. And when somebody has their own jet with their name on it,
No
you don't have
kidding.
in the cell phone lot because they're coming in. And I have great stories from that. He wanted me to come down, get on the jet afterwards, and go to Mar-a-Lago. I did
Right.
not, because I thought I was making dinner for my wife that night, and I didn't want to wake up in Florida.
Right.
So I didn't go. It's one of my big regrets because
Of
I would have.
course. What are you, an idiot? Someone says, get on my private plane and fly to Florida, unless they work for a drug cartel. The answer is yes.
Yeah,
Or it's Jeffrey Epstein. The answer is yes. What are you, crazy?
I should have done it. And then he invited me to have dinner with he and his wife,
Mhm.
Melania, in New York. He wanted me to come visit him. And I happened to be at Fox News like a couple weeks later. And I ended up going to Trump Tower to visit him. I spent a lot of time with him in Trump Tower in his office. Many memorable stories about that. But he, he was considering running, and
Right.
he wanted to sort of wanted people like me to believe that he could run and win. I was skeptical at the time, and what I didn't realize was something that he talked about while he was there. He said, "Neil, I sell $1 million worth of ties to tourists downstairs every year. And basically that is because if you go to New York, and let's say that you're not someone that wears a tie every
Right.
day, when you go to New York, you get the Trump tie.
Right.
That's the tie you wear all whenever you need a tie, because
Exactly.
that's Trump's." And there was something to that, which was that there was a group of people in America who knew him
Mhm.
and knew were familiar with him and felt affinity with him,
Right.
even though he was a very rich person. They don't feel that way with like people like Mitt Romney
Or John
and
Kerry.
or John Kerry.
Right.
And somehow he has created a recipe to create this connection with people who do not have all that money. And it continues to this day. So yes, I met with him there, and I spent a lot of time with him, and we kept in touch for a while.
So you talked about, do you take someone seriously as a candidate? And obviously I'm not going to ask you to be mean or kind or whatever to anybody in particular, but generally speaking, like what are the traits that you've noticed as you see these people come? They come to to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. They come. Sometimes they're total unknowns. Sometimes they're already big deals. Are there traits of the people that you go, even if they don't win the nomination in the end, they're showing me the things that I've seen over and over tend to lead to a more successful candidate.
Well, here's a couple of things that I noticed right off the bat. First of all, how in tune are their staffs? Are their staffs trying to get the names of the people that were in the room? Are they taking them down? Are they sending us notes saying, "Hey, thanks for having us"?
Right.
Do the candidates ask for a teleprompter? A lot of the times, if you're just passing through New Hampshire, you're giving a
Right.
speech, you don't need a teleprompter. But if you're thinking of running for president, sometimes you do need a teleprompter, and
Ah.
they're not easy to find. Here's another thing. Did the potential candidate lose 30 pounds before coming to New Hampshire? Because if they've lost a lot of weight
Right.
and they're rolling in, sometimes there's more to that than
Mhm.
that's the fact that they're on Ozempic. So you've got that. And what are the traits? Politics just like anything else.
Right.
Okay. Let me tell you, are they likable people?
Mhm.
And what do I mean by that? Sometimes people are so wrapped up in their own press releases that they're not likable
Right.
people. But if you take some people who have been successful, I'll name Bill Clinton, for example, and George W. Bush. These are extremely likable people in a small environment. And a lot of the times people will say, I met this person. I don't agree with anything they did, but
Right.
boy, I really like them. Yeah, well, they're likable people.
Mhm.
Look at our former governor, Chris Sununu. You can say what you want about him, but he's certainly a very
Right.
likable, charismatic person. And I think that that's elementary, but we take that for granted. A lot of really rich business people think that because they watch Meet
Right.
the Press on Sunday, that they can be in politics. And the truth is that they're not really that likable
Right.
for whatever reason. And that prevents them many times from getting elected.
So now let's talk about the people that they're talking to, which is the people of the Granite State, New Hampshire. The case that people make who are defending the first station primary is you just won't find voters like this anywhere else. And other people go, oh, come on. Every state has people who care about politics and people who don't care about politics. And so, yeah, you go to any state and you get the people who are political junkies like Michael Graham and Neil Levesque, you're going to have a good crowd. So, is there something different about New Hampshire voters, in your opinion?
There is absolutely a difference. I think that they engage in politics much more than any other state in the nation. There is no doubt about that. And the second part, and our numbers, just in our voting numbers
Right.
and our turnout numbers indicate that. But on an engagement level, as far as civics goes, they expect it. They expect it. And they're not overwhelmed by the fact that, okay, here's a U.S. senator standing before you
Right.
and you're asking that question. They're not overwhelmed by it. Part of that reason is if you live in a state like California with 54 electoral votes, you will never, ever meet your U.S. senator.
Right.
Now, let's face it. Half of the state of New Hampshire, I know, you know what? It's more than that. It's more than half of the state of New Hampshire believes that Jean Shaheen, you know, should be on a Christmas card list. And they love her and they know her because she told them this once, and they expect that from their elected officials. And let's face it, the fact that we have 400 legislators who make $100 a year, a lot of people, by the way, believe they're overpaid, $100 a year, and they live down the street from you, and you know who they are, not just because of the fancy license plates they have, and you feel like you're pissed off about something or happy about something, you can go talk to them. That matters too. So I think there's a lot of things in this recipe, but there is no doubt that the people of New Hampshire take this seriously. Now, I'm going to say this, and I know it's a little controversial, but the National Democratic Party did what they could to try to make it so that Joe Biden did not have to come here to compete.
Right.
And later on, they figured out in a glaring way in a debate that he was not up for this job. And that's unfortunate because that robbed the Democratic Party of the lead time to create and choose the best candidate and have the strongest candidate moving forward to compete against the Republican in 2024. So it was the Democrats who were robbed of this. And as a result, if he had come to New Hampshire on his first day taking questions from New Hampshire voters, we wouldn't have had to wait that long for that debate to take place. So it was really a terrible thing that the National Democrats did to try to take away this primary. And they did it because they wanted to try to hold on to power. And it's a really sinister thing. They stole from Democratic voters who did not have the strongest candidate going into this race.
And one of the arguments that people who support keeping the First Nation primary here make is because people point out, hey, Bernie Sanders didn't win didn't become the nominee. You're not picking winners. Is that they argue that this is a place that filters out the people who deserve to move forward, the people who are prepped to run forward versus the people who are not prepared. And as you just said, President Biden likely would have evidenced that he was not prepared and they would have solved that problem. What do you think is the prognosis for New Hampshire keeping its first in the nation status, particularly among Democrats? Among Republicans, it appears that there's not even really a conversation going on. But do you think that in 2028 that the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at Saint Anselm College is going to be the center of the political universe once again for 3 or 4 weeks?
Not only that, I'll tell you right now, in early 2025, well, we're halfway through 2025, New Hampshire primary is alive and well.
Okay.
There is a lot of activity already going on, and some candidates already choosing to come into New Hampshire because those candidates are voting with their feet. And the Democratic Party nationally can tell them not to, but they're coming here because on election night here, when we're first in the nation, you don't want to be a candidate who says, I'm skipping New Hampshire and I'm going to this other state when all of the focus is here. It is going to happen here. We are going to make sure that happens. And I think on the Republican side, actually, it's a weaker situation because, basically, I'll be frank, what candidate who potentially works in the White House and has a role in the White House wants to get ahead of the Trump skis at this point and start saying, I was in New Hampshire this weekend and we're looking for your replacement, Mr. President. I don't think that's a comfortable place to be. And so that actually has been a little bit quieter. The Republicans and the president are committed to the New Hampshire presidential primary. So I would suspect on the Republican side, it'll be sealed up. I just think that there'll be a little bit of a delay here.
So I agree with you completely. Nobody wants to be the first Republican to go to New Hampshire to campaign. You want to wait till Trump has got it right in his mind. A couple things. One is U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota was just here, was asked directly, do you think New Hampshire should go first? And she said, yes, I support having New Hampshire be the first in the nation state. I think a lot of Democrats are going to find themselves being asked that direct question. And she's kind of set the bar now. And it's going to be interesting to see some of the Democrats who've argued that New Hampshire doesn't have the demographic, isn't well suited demographically for that job. So we watch that. Second thing is, here's how I think the Republican issue is going to get resolved, because you're right. Trump does not like to get upstaged. Here's what happens. You have the midterms, whatever happens, happens. And then Trump basically announces it's Apprentice 2028. And he starts naming names of people. I'd like to see Marco Rubio up in New Hampshire. I'd like to see J.D. Vance. And whoever makes the list of I'd like to see, they will have his unspoken permission to campaign, but he won't be endorsing. He's going to want to see, he loves WWE. He loves MMA. I don't know the initial, but he likes all the fighting stuff. And he's the Apprentice guy. That's what I'm predicting. Neil Levesque right here on the Up to Speed podcast. You watch Apprentice 2028. What do you think?
I think it's a good question. It's a good assumption. I think too that you've got people like Pompeo who are a little bit out of the universe of Trump that may come in as well. He was just here actually in New Hampshire. The other thing I think is that this is a lot dependent upon how strong Trump is in his own party at that point. At this point, he's very strong, but you never know how the future will unfold. And if he's not strong, you could see some candidates who say, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm going to be a part of, appealing directly to voters.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, I want to wrap up with some questions about the NHIP specifically. One of them is you have a lot of business groups, politics and eggs. You've partnered with the New England Council, et cetera. You have a lot of business people involved in what you do there. How important is the First in the Nation primary and New Hampshire's weirdly high political status in the U.S. to the Granite State economy?
Well, it's obviously good for the New Hampshire economy. And if you own a hotel during that primary period, it's really good. But that's not really the reason that we are so fervent about the fact we should be first, and we will be first. It's more about the civic engagement and the work that we do for the rest of the country, meaning that when we were weeding out candidates and we're asking them the tough questions, because you can't do that at the LAX airport tarmac,
right?
We're doing a service for the rest of the country. The New Hampshire presidential primary is good for the rest of the country. Now, that being said, other states have their own sort of things, the Kentucky Derby, for example, and the Indy 500, all these different things that states are known for. But on the civic engagement side, certainly it has an economic impact, but the New Hampshire economy is good already. And we're going to keep trucking along.
I think there's a bigger effect. I think that there are people, because if you're engaged in business, you tend to be engaged in civic life. You just have to be. You're a high information person. That New Hampshire's popping up on your radar more. Just like if you're a computer pro, you own a computer company, you own a whatever, a trucking company, that it's just popping up because the primary keeps putting it in the paper and on TV and on cable news in a way that Vermont and, whatever, Mississippi, whatever, they're just not. So I think that's an ancillary benefit. But we got to start wrapping up. Your favorite New Hampshire Institute of Politics moments, other than when RFK Jr. showed up and a jerky reporter in the back of the room was tipped off to ask him, are you running for president? Other than that moment, what are some of your favorite moments?
Well, he brought Cheryl Hines.
That was a great moment.
That was pretty cool. If you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan,
who isn't?
That wasn't bad. Hey, I've spent time with a lot of these candidates, and on a serious note, I'll tell you that it doesn't matter what party they are. When you're running for these offices, or you've been elected, let's say a U.S. senator or a congressman, you are a patriotic person. You're trying to do the right thing by your constituents. This is not about money. It's not about all these other things in a sinister way that so many Americans think that these folks are in this business for. they are actually here because they believe in this country. Some of them disagree about the way that the country should be going. So it's gratifying to be around those types of people. But I have many funny stories. Some of them involve Trump, as we mentioned. Some of them involve Jeb Bush, who was really one of the best. And Harris, by the way, despite her public perception, she's really wonderful to be around, very smart. I enjoyed her tremendously. But my daughter being asked by Jeb Bush in the green room who her favorite president was, and of course with Jeb Bush, there's only two answers:
Exactly,
brother or the son, or the brother or the dad. And I said, "Oh my God, I hope she doesn't say something like Barack Obama." She's 13 years old at the time, and she rolled out and she said, "Well, that would be James K. Polk." Which I almost passed out, and Jeb Bush started laughing.
It's a great answer.
Way, if you think Jeb Bush is not a smart guy, he rattled off 20 reasons why James K. Polk was the perfect answer for my daughter.
The most successful one-term president in history, without a doubt. I mean, he's no Calvin Coolidge. I mean, let's not get over our skis here. There's no Calvin Coolidge. But what about for the history? Is there a moment where the NHIP played a significant role where somebody said something or something happened, whatever? Was there a time when people were leaving? You know, you could see them either headed up the ladder or headed down the ladder.
Well, I think there are many, many times when this institute was involved with a national program, let's say, that changed the outcome of the race. But I think that the Trump debate with those 13 other candidates, you know, the little Marco comment, John Kasich sort of wondering why he was up there. I think that was a key moment. Fact that during an ABC debate years ago, when all of the Democratic candidates were on the stage and they were supposed to exit left, so on the right-hand side, all the Republican candidates could go during commercial break and come up on the stage. And when they came back from commercial, they were all still there. All of them. They didn't know what to do. Or Hillary Clinton, when she came back, when they came off of commercial during an ABC debate, and her podium was empty because she was still in the restroom. And the producer, who I have a thing in my ear, so I hear the whole production, and I'm hearing, where the hell is she? They're at 60-minute.
Exactly.
It's a television show. It's a production. So that was kind of fun. But there are a lot of things that change the outcomes, and we've had a lot of, notable things. Newt Gingrich telling people that the poor kids in a community should be the ones cleaning the schools before school, or the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, saying to my students, for those of you who are 21, you'll be able to vote for me next fall. And they all in unison turned towards me. They all turned like this and said, they go, did they change the rule? Vote when they're 18. That was fun.
Well, there were three reasons why he got that question wrong, and I can't remember. So last thing, your advice to the many, many potential presidential candidates who are watching Up to Speed at NHJournal.com. What's your one tip for someone who wants to be president, who's coming to New Hampshire to campaign?
Get out of the bubble, know why you want to run, and go out and talk to regular voters, because you'll learn a lot from them and it'll be part of your message. And I think, by the way, Bill Clinton did that. And he, I think, or a type of person like him, is the answer to some of the problems that the Democrats are having now with bubble candidates who never leave, who get talking points, who read speeches and can't communicate with regular people.
Neil Levesque, thanks so much for joining us here on Up to Speed. We really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Michael.
This Up to Speed podcast is made possible by Legislative Solutions. Legislative Solutions knows New Hampshire's politics inside and out. With years of experience and a results-driven approach, they're the go-to team for anyone looking to make an impact at the State House. Find them at legislative-solutions.com.